my fellow comic book collectors, it's Alan, the Comic Collector Geek, and this is Wednesday, the video where I answer your questions. I have some pretty good questions. I'm going to show some pretty cool books. Let's get right into it. The first question comes from Quasi Terrible. He asked me two questions, actually. First, do you have any favorite Proto character covers in your collection? For example, Tales of Suspense 31, which is the first appearance of Doom. Actually, it's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool cover. I don't have that book. That's on my want list of books, but that's the first appearance of like the prototype of Doom. Now, the ones that I have, that would be my favorite, and it's something that you will see in a future unboxing, if that makes any sense, because in like based on the way you guys are seeing these videos, like I recorded unboxing, right? And it's not going to air until like maybe a few weeks from now, but I have it already. So, but in terms of what you guys see, you won't see it yet. But this is kind of like a really, like I was super excited to get this book. So this is kind of my favorite prototype book, I guess, because of that. There's actually another one that I was actually searching for when preparing for this video, which is a prototype Spider-Man book, where it's like this giant spider on the cover, and it's like, you know, a radioactive spider that gets really big. I have that book as well, but I didn't bring it. I couldn't find it. So it's somewhere in my collection, and I'm looking for it, and I hope to bring it some other time. But I did bring this book, and this is a really cool prototype. This is Dime Press number 4, and this is the first prototype, or kind of prototype, of Hellboy. That's Hellboy. Normally you think of Hellboy as being red. In this he's gray. He's kind of like the Gray Hulk, maybe. But yeah, it's kind of like the first appearance of Hellboy. And this is often cited as being the first appearance of Hellboy. But it's a really great book. It's kind of, I consider it kind of a prototype only because of the fact that he's not the way we kind of picture him now. So yeah, this is, I'm not even sure if they refer to him as Hellboy in this book. It's all in Italian. So, but it's just a very cool comic. First appearance of Hellboy, and kind of like a prototype. Now, actually, the next question, I'll be showing another prototype, so stay tuned for that. One sec here. The next question was, what are your favorite Gorilla covers in your collection? Well, my favorite Gorilla cover of all would be this one, and it's just one that I recently got. My friend Lady Pop Hunter told me about this book, and I was like, oh, that's a really cool cover. So it's like Nazi gorillas. You know, you got this, it's just such a crazy cover. It kind of reminds me of Planet of the Apes a bit. Yeah, it's like Nazi gorillas. I think it's just so cool. This is Weird War Tales number 89. I just think it's a great gorilla cover. But the next one I'm going to show is a prototype. This book has so much going on for it, and it's a prototype. It's a SOTI book. It's you know, cool gorilla cover. It's got all this stuff going for it, and it's Strange Adventures number 39. And yeah, so this is kind of interesting because so this book is actually a pedigree as well. I'm going to show it as well. The reason this was mentioned in The Seduction of the Innocent, just for those people that are interested in that, The Seduction of the Innocent is the book that led to the Comic Code Authority. There was a police officer that was kind of slightly attacked by the gorilla. So yeah, that was the abuse of police officers. It's considered a bad thing, you know, like showing police in that negative way. So yeah, so that's why it was in The Seduction of the Innocent. But the cool thing about this gorilla is intelligent. He's like super smart, and that's why he's being he's in court to basically be on trial kind of thing. So it's an interesting story. Now, the reason this is kind of considered a prototype is that's exactly the same thing as Gorilla Grodd. So this is considered to be the prototype for Gorilla Grodd. So it's like a triple key, like it's So Deep book, cool Gorilla cover, and kind of a prototype for Gorilla Grodd. So this is Strange Adventures 39, and my copy is part of the Mile High collection. So it says, this is to certify this copy of Strange Adventures 39 was part of the Mile High collection and comes from in its original bag and board and was stored for decades. And it's I'm not sure who, some agent or ID. So it's just kind of cool that it's a Mile High pedigree as well. So just a book that I have in my collection. But I should really get that like slabbed because get the gold label or something. But so that's hopefully a good answer to your question. Okay, next question comes from Matt Blogs. Now that you have that you're about to complete the Wonder Woman collection, do you have plans to get the complete Sensation Comics and Comic Cavalcade runs? Actually, I do have the complete Wonder Woman collection now. As at the time of filming this, the last Wonder Woman book that I needed has arrived, so I have the complete Wonder Woman collection. And in terms of Sensation Comics, so the next task in terms of Wonder Woman, in terms of my Wonder Woman collecting, is to go after Sensation Comics. So I've already started the process. I have a pretty good run going with Sensation Comics. I have actually almost the first 6 issues, and there's like a bunch of other issues that I have. But I'm going to just show you the first 2 because the first 2 are cool. So I figured, hey, why not show them? So the first one, this is Sensation Comics #1, and it's just a really classic, Wonder Woman cover, and she's doing the bullets and bracelets thing, where she's blocking the bullets with her bracelets. So that's kind of cool. And number 2, this is Sensation Comics #2. It's the first appearance of Etta Candy. Actually, #1 of Sensation Comics has like a whole bunch of first appearances too. It has the first appearance of Wildcat and Mr. Fantastic, I think. And it actually doesn't say that, but I'm pretty sure there's like a couple first appearances in this as well. So just a cool couple of Sensation Comics. I actually like the covers better in Sensation Comics than Wonder Woman. So probably I'll be picking up like a few issues. I'm not sure if I'll get the full run because that's just another big task. But I already have probably about, I would say about 10 to 15 comics from the Sensation run. So kind of working that way. As I get more and more of them, maybe I'll say, oh, might as well finish it off. In terms of Comic Cavalcade, it ran 29 issues where it was Wonder Woman, Flash, and Green Lantern, I think were the 3 characters. But I don't have any of them. I don't have any Comic Cavalcade in my collection. And I had a couple opportunities to buy Comic Cavalcade #1, but I kind of missed out on the bid. I actually did try to get it. And I would like to get certain covers from that run where it's just kind of these kind of quirky covers with Wonder Woman on it. So yeah, I'll probably pick up a few of those, but I'm not really seeking after it right now. But yeah, it's something that might happen. It's sort of what happens with me is I'll start with Wonder Woman, for example. I just wanted to buy a couple issues. Like I just wanted to have, I'll have a Golden Age issue. And then I was like, why not I go after #1? And then, but how about I go after all the keys? And then I'm like, how about I just, get the run of 1 through 20? How about I get the run through 1 to 50? And then I get end up getting the whole thing, right? So that's maybe what'll happen with Sensation Comics and Comic Cavalcade. Okay, the last question actually is I'm going to spend a lot of time on this last question, and it's kind of a very interesting question. It's from my friend Stephen, who asked, and he's also known as Collecto6 on Instagram. He wrote, "Will you describe the first attempt at the comic code? Who was involved, and did it fail? How did it fail to catch on? Or why did it fail, basically?" So Comic Code Authority, is kind of famous. That's what we see on the comics right there. You can see it. That's the Comic Code Authority. Now, there was an earlier code that happened back in 1947. It didn't really go public until 1948, July 1st of 1948 to be exact. And it was called A.C.M.P, which stands for the Association of Comics Magazine Publishers. And this organization was a little different than the Comic Code Authority. It was kind of, it's a precursor to it. And it had some pretty major people involved. It had Phil Keeman from Hillman Periodicals, Leverett Gleason, from Lee Gleason Publications, Bill Gaines from EC Comics, he's a major guy, Harold Moore from Famous Funnies, Ray Herman from Orbit Publishing, Frank Armour, who is a distributor, and Irving Mannheimer, who is also a distributor. And they had the president of this organization was George Delacorte Jr., who was related to Dell Publishing. So basically, we have pretty much all the major publishers except Marvel and DC. Okay, so, and a few other major ones, but like Fawcett, and there's a bunch of other major ones that weren't there. But these are pretty major publishers that are involved. Now, the reason that they kind of set up this organization was, what happened was there was a bunch of issues where, again, juvenile delinquency, people reading comics, it's destroying the youth. And there was actually a real problem in New York where some publications weren't allowed to publish within New York State. There was a law that was on the books in New York. It was like 64 years old. This is an old law that was on the books in New York, where you couldn't have pictures and stories of deeds of bloodshed, lust, or crime, which takes out all the fun out of comics. but that was the way it was. You couldn't have any comics with any of those things in it. And what happened was that was a pretty big market not to be able to get into. So they thought, hey, we can maybe do this code and show that we're working in good faith and allow ourselves to get distributed within New York. There was also a bunch of things with people like Frederick Wortham and a few others who wrote in these publications like the Saturday like Review and stuff like that, who basically was pushing the idea that, and he's being a psychologist, he had a little bit of credentials behind him. He was kind of pushing this idea that, hey, comics are the cause for the rise in juvenile delinquency. So that was there was a real push. And there was even a book burning that happened in Spencer, Virginia, West Virginia, in October of 1948, that basically, was another thing that kind of really got these publishers activated, where they were kind of, but this was after the fact of this thing, but just all that, and the environment was really bad for publishers at that time. People were really paranoid about it, and that those book burnings were actually held in parishes across the U.S. So it was a pretty big deal. Now, back when this was started, they were really just trying to get around this law that was in New York. And the law actually got overturned in March of 1948. So, they started it in 47. The law gets overturned in March of 48. So there's a little bit, maybe we don't really need to do this as much. But they didn't go public with this new code until July of 1948. So after the law had been overturned. As a result, though, a lot of the publishers just didn't even bother. Like Dell refused to even join, even though the president of this association was somebody from Dell, the founder of Dell. He refused to be part of it. It's like, oh my goodness. Okay. And then people like Bill Gaines, he pulled out of it. And then a lot of the bigger and smaller publishers didn't even want to be involved. So it didn't really get the membership that it needed to kind of sustain itself. That was kind of the reason why it kind of fell apart. And another thing that kind of made it all silly, like they had the code, and they'd put it on comics and stuff, but nobody would actually check. Nobody would like say, oh, did this comic actually not have these things? And they actually had a pretty good list of what was in the code. And I'll read the list. It's actually kind of a funny list of things, but things that will play a bigger role later when the Comic Code Authority comes into play. Okay, so it was actually just 6 points. That was the A.C.M.P code. The first one was no sexiness, basically. No sexy or wanton images within the comics, okay? So women had to be like shown fully dressed, I guess, no nudity. And the minimum amount of dressing is that they had to be able to, like the minimum dress was that they wore a swimsuit that would be acceptable within America, so, no skimpy bathing suits, but, you could wear maybe a bikini, I guess, would be suitable. Number 2 was crime should not be shown in a positive light. And this actually really becomes a big thing later when the Comic Code Authority comes into play. Policemen, judges, government officials all had to be shown in a positive light. You couldn't show like a police officer being incompetent. You had to show them all being competent and good people, So that's number 2. Number 3, no scenes of sadistic torture, which really makes the pre-code horror stuff questionable. But yeah, so so no scenes of sadistic torture. Number 4 is vulgar and obscene language should never be used. And slang even should be very seldomly used and only used when it furthers the story. So really kept to a minimum. And divorce, number 5, is divorce should not be treated in a humorously or in a glamorous light. So no divorced characters for the most part. And if there is a divorced character in a comic, you should show it in a negative way. Like that is like this is a tragedy that they're divorced. Number 6 is ridicule or attack on any religious or racial group is never allowed. Okay, so that was a big thing that they really everyone sort of rewrites history where they say, oh, back then people were really racist. Not at all. Not at all. There was very little tolerance for racial prejudice. Within comics, at least. People get sensitive about some things in comics, but it was a lot of the stuff that people are sensitive about was not intended in a negative way against any racial group. But these rules that this A.C.M.P had put into play, they were became later the foundation for the Comic Code Authority, which which expanded upon those rules quite a lot, actually. But it really was a kind of, we were talking about prototypes in this video, we're talking about prototype characters. Well, this was a prototype code, and it really did set up the process for when the Common Code Authority would come in later, that they had sort of a bit of a blueprint that they could work upon and really make the Common Code Authority a pretty brutal thing. Like it was much more severe than this. You know, they would have certain things like you couldn't use within the Common Code Authority, you couldn't use, for example, the word horror, terror, weird, eerie. You know, there were certain things like that, and it was excessive. The Common Code Authority. They also got into drug use. That was not a thing that was allowed in the comics. A lot of stuff that you know, would be, you know, stuff that you'd see normally in comics nowadays would never be allowed during the Common Code Authority era. So just a really interesting time. You know, comics were really the scapegoat for what was happening in America at that time, where people were, you know, wondering why the youth is kind of acting up, I guess. And there was a uptick in crime during that era, and you know what the cause was probably wasn't comics, but nobody ever really investigated to find out what the cause was. You know, there was always, you know, the witches rather than the actual truth, maybe. So yeah, so that's it. Those are the questions for this week. I hope this story of this A.C.M.P. Jeez, keep on saying it wrong. Was interesting, and I hope you enjoyed some of the comics, like some apes and Nazis. I'm not sure if that would make. I'm not sure. Like, how did this make it past the code? You know, but yeah. So yeah. So just fun things like that. I hope you enjoyed. Please, if you have a question, put it in the comments below, and I'll answer it next week. If you can do it quickly, though, within the next 2 days. After this video is released, because I have to film it before Friday, so it's just the way it is this week. It's a little bit of a tight week for me. So yeah, so ask your questions and I will get to them, and see you in the next video. Bye for now.